So Twisters is considered a standalone sequel to the 1996 film Twister, which was at that time the second biggest movie of 1996, which is kind of crazy to think about. It was only superseded by Independence Day, which a lot of people would consider that to also be a disaster film. There
Yeah.
certainly was in the mid to late 90s a big disaster film boom, largely because of Independence Day and Twisters. We would get things like Volcano and Dante's Peak and Deep Impact, so on and so forth. Ultimately, until I think around the mid 2000s, it pretty much died out. Roland Emmerich was kind of the guy keeping disaster films around, and he's been kind of the guy to keep them around because he made
Mm-hmm.
2012 and 2009. We talked
Yeah.
about Moonfall a couple of years ago.
Oh
Not a
Lord.
great film, but I would say between him and also like Gerard Butler, they're kind of the two
Mm-hmm.
guys who still fuel this genre because it's largely been absent and been sort of non-existent. We don't really get disaster films anymore. Probably because the world is enough of
Yeah,
a
we're living
disaster. We're living
it.
disasters every goddamn day. Just look at this past weekend; it's just always
Lord
craziness, and
Jesus.
so I think we're probably trying to avoid situations that remind us of our mortality. But Twisters is definitely coming back and sort of being and serving as a throwback, I think, to a particular era of film. But we got a chance to go check out this movie this past weekend. With all of that out the way, I'll pass it over to you, man. What did you think about this brand new disaster film, Twisters?
Like you said, this is a somewhat direct sequel of that original Twister film back in '96, and this film is fun. I actually had a really good time with this movie. It's exactly pretty much what I expected it to be. Like, I don't know what you expect the Twisters movie to be, but it's really what I wanted. I really wanted the original Twister, but in like 2024. Like, give me some updated graphics, still make it ridiculous. Give me the charisma of Glenn Powell, and I'm happy. And that's really what I got, man. I got all of those things, and I left pretty satisfied with what I got. I love that it does follow a lot of tragedy in this one, as opposed to that original Twisters, which is just like the original Twister is not like this. It is put together a little bit differently, where here is like, no, something tragic happens, and now we're trying to prevent more tragedy from happening, and that is, of course, a through line of the original Twister as well. But it's something about it here, I think, kind of they tried to give a little more heart to it. It felt pretty much the same, and I think part of it is because, to be honest, Daisy Edgar Jones is just like okay to me. Like, in the movie, it's just like, you're cool, like she was the lead, but I don't know. It's something about her, because when Glenn Powell comes in, it's like, oh, there's a charisma. Where is that in Daisy Edgar Jones? I wish he had a little bit more charisma, I think, in this role. But man, overall, I had a really good time with the film. Maybe like there was a slow period for me. I was like, all right, what are we doing? It was like 5-10 minutes of a slow period, but other than that, I think I got exactly what I wanted. There's some really, really cool action pieces and set pieces in here that I like, that you could tell again that they were trying to capture, I think, the essence of that original Twister just in 2024, what that new technology feels like, what some of the new CGI looks like, what some of the new practical stuff even looks like. How does that feel in the new movie, in a new movie feel? And that gave that to me. So yeah, man, overall fine film. Nothing I think that blows my socks off. To me, it's not bad either. It just kind of fits in the middle as a really fun disaster movie. And to be honest, a lot of disaster movies aren't that great. So I had a pretty good time with this one, and I'm pretty proud of the way it came out.
I got to push back on that tragedy point because in the first one, Helen Hunt definitely loses her father at a young age in the beginning. That kind of
That
shapes her
was in the
whole
beginning.
that shapes her whole
Thought it was later
experience.
in the movie.
No,
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought it
that
was
that
later in the
that
movie.
happens in the
That is
beginning
early.
of the movie. So this one plays very similar to where things kind of start off with the tragic event ultimately that really fuels kind of the plot of the film. But ultimately, Twisters is definitely something that I was interested in just because of the fact that, again, we don't get disaster films, especially to the scale, really anymore, unless it is a director like Roland Emmerich. And Lee Isaac Chung is the director behind this. Wouldn't ring off as like the most obvious choice. I mean, his most recent movie was Minari, which came out a few years ago, a heavily critically praised, awarded movie. Very much a small, intimate family drama about their experience moving to America. A lot of times it's semi autobiographical to his own experience, but Lee Isaac Chung actually grew up in Arkansas. He grew up on in a
Mm.
small town on a
Mm-hmm.
farm, and so he probably experienced a lot of really, really crazy weather events like twisters and all sorts of things that typically happen in the Midwest. And so it actually, I think, served him well to tell the story about this smaller community. They're setting it once again sort of in Oklahoma, and just
Mm-hmm.
following these different factions who love to chase twisters. You know, Daisy Edgar Jones, her whole experience is sort of painted by a tragedy that happened in her life, and she sort of has to return to form and return to ultimately what she loves to do, but she has to get lured back into that whole practice. But then on the other side of things, you have Glenn Powell here, who's basically playing a YouTuber. He's an influencer, and he has a whole crew with him, and they chase tornadoes. And they're really, really fun, and they really inject a lot of life into the movie. All the stuff you might have seen in the trailer, they carry that all the way over into just the energy of the movie. They really, I think, add the necessary energy, the excitement, and the enthusiasm for people who would love to do this in terms of what you sort of need. That's that energy that you
Yeah.
need to be able to live this lifestyle, because it's a really, really
Okay.
dangerous and crazy lifestyle. But Glenn Powell is really the star here. I've talked about him so many times on this podcast. I'm all in on Glenn Powell. He's ruled the summer already. Everything that he did in Hitman on Netflix, one of my favorite films of the year so far. Even to the other plays that he's done with the rom coms, and now Twister, another sort of bigger blockbuster effort. This is him kind of returning to the character that we saw in Top Gun Maverick, which I think a lot of people probably fell in love with him during that movie and the performance that he gave here. He's calling back to a lot of that energy, a lot of that charisma, and it just once again showcases why he's a movie star that's emerging right now. He's definitely on the rise, and I just
Mm-hmm.
love what he brought here. And I also just love, just like the random people that pop up in this movie that I don't or didn't at least expect to see. There were definitely like some surprises here across the board. I'm thinking about Katie O'Brien. I did not realize that she was in this
Mm-hmm.
movie, but we talked a
Mm-hmm.
lot about her earlier this year with Love Lies Bleeding. And then, of course, David Cornsweet, who's about to be our brand new Superman. He's
Yeah,
in this
Hanky.
film playing probably a very opposite character of what he's going to be in Clark Kent. So it was nice to see, sort of a different side to him as well. So definitely like some good faces that I was also like happy to see as well. But it's really, really fun. It's great action, big spectacle, some romance, a little bit of romance in there. Definitely high adrenaline, high energy. Just the perfect sort of vibe that you would want out of a summer blockbuster movie. I think that they pretty much nailed it. This is one of the better sequels that you're going to get to a project that came out a different generation. And it's not even, I don't even think we can call it a legacy sequel just because it really has
Mm-hmm.
no connection to the first one. But again, in terms of a follow up, this is pretty much the best you can get because it does deliver a lot of that same excitement, a lot of that same energy as the first one. It's not as good as the first one, but it definitely lives up to the namesake of what they're going
Mm-hmm.
after here. But it had a tremendous opening weekend. It did phenomenal at the box office, somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 million, way over projections. I think that nobody really saw that coming. It was initially projected between 45, 55 million. Then they raised it, and then Thursday night previews came out, and they had made like $10 million. Ultimately, it secured the second highest live action domestic opening of the year, and it's also just $2 million shy of what Oppenheimer made in the same exact weekend last year, which is
Crazy.
crazy. Now,
Insane.
it's not going to make what Oppenheimer made, but that's a really, really good sign of just how well it played and how many people wanted to see this. On top
Mm-hmm.
of it, what I wanted to ask you about too is just like the theatrical experience. We saw this in IMAX, like we typically see a lot of movies, but there's like a huge viral thing happening on social media, on TikTok right now. People seeing this movie in 4DX and getting their lives wrecked and destroyed. Like people are hanging on for dear life in this 4DX experience. And if you've never been to a 4DX movie, I mean, it's all the gadgets and gizmos. The seats move. You'll get sprayed with water and mist. There might be wind effects. It's basically like a theme park ride. What do you make of that? Because I think for me personally, 4DX is just not, it's not my style. I just don't want to go through all of that shit while I'm watching a movie. If I wanted to do that, I'll go to Universal. But this is a movie that had a ride for about a good 20 years at Universal. And so this might be like the perfect experience to sort of recreate what it's like to be on a theme park ride in a movie theater. But there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that are really itching to go see that 4DX experience to get all of those different effects and all of those different, sort of background things that they add to the film.
Yeah, I think natural disaster movies are the perfect opportunity or the reason that you use and go to 40X films, man. I mean, it's probably the most fun you're going to get out of any kind of movie. in that format, man. Like if it's we watching Twisters, I'm trying to feel the Twisters, bro. Like what's good? I'm in it. I'm in the natural disaster too. I'm even thinking about what what it would have been like to see a movie, crazy movie like 2012 in a 40x theater. Like there's a lot going on in a lot of these movies. So like you said, I've seen some of the videos too of Twisters. People get rocked in 40x, and I think it makes sense though. I think this is the perfect opportunity to go see as such, because people have told me like, oh, I don't know, I seen Spider Verse in 40x. I'm like, that's cool, but like I don't know if I'm really about that. You know what I'm saying? Not for Spider Man, but for Twisters, I absolutely would pull up for a 40x theater, get that experience. Like you said, like we talked about, this was Twister. You did used to have an attraction at Universal Studios. I would love to get some of that feel back. But if you want to get embedded into the experience of what it's like to be out in the country chasing tornadoes, I think 40x is the way to go. So I think it's a really cool opportunity to take advantage of that movie format.
We're increasingly seeing how the release strategy, the formats, all of these things that we often talk about with theatrical experiences, we're seeing again just the reinforcing idea of how important it is to have something unique, a unique value proposition for people to go to. And I think in large part, seeing this in some sort of premium format, whether it's Dolby with great sound or a huge giant screen on IMAX or a fucking theme park ride with 40X, that's giving people something different that they can't get at home. You can't replicate the experience of mist spraying in your face or wind or a flying cow. I don't know, any of that stuff. You can't recreate that at home. And so it's actually urging people to go out. And so kind of brilliant that this movie really plays into those sensibilities, maybe more so than most other genre films. But we'll have to see how this movie continues to play out over the rest of the summer. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the brand new disaster film Twisters. If you've checked this out this past weekend, hit us up and let us know what you think.